Uh, as you know, Sharon ji, she is a performing artist, teacher, choreographer, scholar, and trained in Odissi, Mayurbhanchau, and Manipuri. She has been trained in Odissi by the legendary Guru Charan Mahapatra. She has presented and promoted all Indian classical dance forms across the country and internationally for 45 years. She is also the founder of Manas Art Without Frontiers, and she has won several awards and honors for her contributions. Namaskar and welcome. Once I have with me Taranya Rath, who is a SPIC MACAY volunteer and a student of product design from NIFT Bangalore. Over to Taranya.
Namaskar, ma'am. Good morning and welcome to today's interaction with Sharon Lowen ji. Sharon ji was born in Detroit and had a 17-year training in classical ballet. She came to India in 1973 after earning degrees in humanities, fine arts, Asian studies, and dance from the University of Michigan. She came to India with a Fulbright scholarship to study Manipuri and later Chau in Odissi. She has trained in Odissi under Guru Kelu Cherna Mahapatra from 1975. She is the first woman soloist of a previously all-male form responsible for introducing Mayuban Chau to United States at the 1978 Asian Dance Festival in Hawaii and later at the Olympics Art Festival of Masks in Los Angeles. She is singularly responsible for getting Chau presented on Doordarshan's national broadcast. Ma'am, now I welcome you and please take us through your journey.
Thank you. And it's really a pleasure to be with you. And I'm so grateful that SPIC MACAY is organizing their conference online and doing all of the wonderful work. And I'm especially pleased to be speaking with the attendees of this convention because you are exactly what I was when I was a youngster. Always curious, always wanting to explore, to absorb, to try things out. Whenever there was an opportunity, taking 5 days of Bharatanatyam during a ballet conference, doing master classes in some folk dance, arts, crafts, literature, whatever it was. And these are the things that all be part of you, even if it's just a taste.
Ma'am, so first of all, I'd just like you to briefly speak about how your journey is from coming from doing ballet to getting introduced to
I saw things from Africa, Asia, Europe. And so, whether it was, Gopi Krishnan or Uday Shankar, everyone in the world came through Michigan to perform.
Okay.
So, I understood when I was in school that you are always going to get more busy. So you better pack in as much as you can now. And the other thing was that when I grew up in America in the 50s, that was a time, 50s, 60s, when people were able to travel to Europe post-retirement. Oh. And I said, everything in the world is so interesting. What if I wanted to be somewhere else? So I started traveling early. I managed to get to California when I was 10 with someone to visit relatives. I went to Mexico. I taught Head Start puppetry in Mississippi. And then I spent, during college, I spent 2 summers in Europe, 3 months each. So next on my list, my young bucket list, was India.
So as you were an Odissi teacher, you're a guru. I just wanted you to shed your views on the Guru Shishya Parampara, and which is unique to our Indian culture, and how have you adopted that, and how have you celebrated that over the years, and what do you do?
So, I mean, I was very blessed that my gurus were all very generous. And in fact, the reason that I am an Odissi dancer today is obviously because Guru Kailacharan Mahapatra is a great artist, a generous teacher, and was wonderful, but also because he actually forced me. When I started Odissi, he was coming to Triveni Kala Sangam in New Delhi and giving workshops for 2 or 3 months. And the first year, I looked at it, and it was beautiful to see so many students able to learn from one guru. He had an ability in his pedagogy to train more than 1 or 2 at a time. But I was not a dance collector. When I was completing the second year of my Fulbright scholarship, I thought that I would take his workshop with permission from my Manipuri guru, only academically, only to understand what Odissi was. Anyway, when I took the workshop, Guruji felt that because of my background, I could learn very quickly. And he taught me Mangalacharan Batu, Savari Pallavi within just 2 months. And he forced me to get a costume made. He forced, with Kavita Shridrani, to get the right star to go to Gopati. He forced me to make a music recording, and he insisted that I had to continue. And then over the years, he was the one who would always say, when I came to Orissa, he said, I want you also to present Manipuri here. They need to see it. Now, the relationship with the guru, you see, the word guru is used very loosely these days. A guru is not simply a teacher. A guru is a master teacher. And not only a master teacher, but a mentor, someone who cares everything about you. Kilu Babu, Guruji, was like that. I have seen him literally do the makeup from powdered pigments and paint the altar on the feet of an entire troop of dancers. He treated us all with love and affection as though we were his daughters. In America, when we toured, if I took off my boots because we were placed and it was cold, and I left the boots and went into the dressing room, Guruji would bring them in. Because to him, I'm like his baby. So he gave so much guidance in so many ways, because to be an artist, you're not only learning the skill and the craft, but you have to absorb from the life that you live with your guru whenever you have the opportunity to be with him or her. All of the things, how you do arati, because what is your attitude, even toward others. One time, Guruji took me with him from Orissa to Allahabad en route back to Delhi, because he was going to be accompanying Sanjukta Panagrahi. That was a great learning experience, because Sanju Nani, she shared with me the details of how she would put pins, keep the fly away. I saw how an artist behaves with the sponsors, with the musicians, what are the little, niceties. And in every way, Guruji was supportive. Let me give you one example of a great thing that a guru does. In 1978, when I had only learned 5 items complete, and I was returning to the US for a while, we made a recording in Orissa. And after those 5 items were recorded, Guruji had the musicians record 5 more that I hadn't learned. He said, this will save you money. Next time you'll learn them. And he totally had trust that I would never misuse this music. And he wanted to help me. This is a guru.
So talk about gurus. What is your first memory of Guru Purnima that we celebrate, and how do you celebrate?
Say again? Oh, Guru Purnima.
Yeah, right.
That's an interesting question. One time there was a student coming to Guruji and doing the whole ritual to become a shishya. And I said, Guruji, I've been your shishya and I've never done this. He said, forget it, not necessary. The relationship, you see, every ritual is something that has meaning because you put meaning into it. When you do your Bhumi Pranam, if you think with gratitude and respect about the earth, it has a meaning. If it's just a physical exercise, it means nothing. Now, it's very interesting. On Guru Purnima, my students that are international are the ones who call me from all over the world. And yet my Indian students prefer to remember me on Teacher's Day.
That's what I was going to ask you, that, what's the difference between the traditions from the 80s that you have seen and you have, grown up with versus today's generation when you are teaching students and disciples?
Well, the difference, that's a good question. I mean, what is the difference? The difference in the teaching, of course, obviously there's more teachers. We all know that dance is popular. Dance is getting faster. I think one difference is that because of the popularity of dance, that you have large classes, which means that teachers are doing group compositions. And in a group composition, everyone gets an opportunity to participate. And so sometimes people say, well, now there's no point in having.
I saw a few of your previous interviews where you had mentioned about a language barrier, how you didn't understand what was in Odissi, the written of the wordings that you say. Can you emphasize a little more how it was different for you versus the other students who were learning Odissi?
Yes, it's interesting. It's kind of a situation where if you get lemons, make lemons. So because of not having the language facility to peg movements onto, this had obviously it's a disadvantage because I had to take time to get the text, get the connotation, get the denotation, what is all of the meaning of everything, what is the backstory. But I feel this has turned out to be a major advantage. For one thing, I've always gone more deeply into understanding the text, the poetry. What is the context of the poet? What is the difference between the poetry and the choreography, which is interpreting it? Right. Because in Odissi, unlike Bharatanatyam, Guruji created the sancharis, and we stick to what he created, rather than having the flexibility of creating your own sancharis while you're dancing. We do that in our own choreography. The other thing, too, is that because I had to understand and internalize the text, I did not assume that my audience is understanding the text and the words. That meant that I must make it absolutely clear through the bhav and through the action. And so it also made it possible for me to then go into other languages. So if there's, Tyagaraja, then I take Tyagaraja. If I go to Kerala, then I do in Malayalam, or for Durdarshan, Dogra, Bengali. So I've done so many different languages because of developing that ability to unpeel the onion of what is that whole context.
Right. So that another question was, have you had to change any teaching methods over the course of the years? As the world is rapidly changing and children have more access to more exposure through various platforms like the internet and all. Have you had to do anything different, for your students when you teach them?
Well, one of the things that coming from the West, as well as having training here and seeing things, there's my bhasha is dance, and there's no accent in any dance styles. but definitely I am American in my attitudes toward wanting everyone to achieve rather than the attitude of fostering competition. So I've always endeavored to make the classroom a place where everyone is comfortable. And one thing that I've done from the beginning with my students is have students see each other, sometimes in pairs, and sometimes like some in front and some watching. This gives them the ability to see things that are working or that need correction that may not be an issue for them or that may give them an idea of what they need. And then it also gives them the training later to become teachers themselves. So, for instance, Vishwanath Mangaraj, who I've taught for like 19 years, he's just a wonderful teacher because from the earliest, from 9, 10 years old, he's learned how to see what it is that someone is doing, how it needs to be corrected, what needs to be done. It also gives students permission to share and to care about each other rather than it being just hierarchical learning from the teacher. And, I don't assume that students should know things. But the one thing is that I'm unfortunately or fortunately, I don't like to use the word strict, but I'm afraid I am. I mean, I'm quite a stickler. And I find that those students who really just want to have an experience, that there are so many teachers they can go to where they don't have to be technically very perfect and they can have a wonderful time and they can be in costume and they can do dances and you stop at 10th or 12th. But for anybody who wants to go on, you have to have a perfect foundation, whether it's in bhav and expression from the beginning and also in your Angasud.
So, as you mentioned that you say that you're probably strict, I want to ask how important do you think it is for today's gurus to be a certain amount of strict, inculcate, a certain amount of discipline, because Indian art form is not just about the dance, it's about so much more. It's about the culture, it's about, your riyaz that you do, or just, like in Kathak, you'd probably do just
I was very, very relieved when to research because it's up to the student. And today everything is available.
Right.
If you want to see what the technique of Odissi is, you can see Guru Sharon on my YouTube channel doing all of the basic stepping that I've got, archival recordings that I took in America. If you want to have background in the arts, you go and look at Sahapedia. You go and look at everything on Google. So it's the student's responsibility. Agnes DeMille said to a dancer who said, "Should I dance?" She said, "If you have to ask, then the question is no. You have to follow and do because you want to. You are not going to get the rewards that you would doing a career in business. And it has to be an inner motivation and an inner drive. And as I've said in other interviews, when I was 13, I reluctantly accepted that I could not be a professional dancer because I felt I couldn't give that many hours a day to Riaz because I really loved so many other things. I kept up with my dancing and other things. And yet all of that came together and here I am. I mean, I've been in India 47 years. And when I came, foreigners were considered hippies. It wasn't until the 90s when I made my Videshi Kalaka Utsav festival. And I presented artists like Ileana Chittaristi, Dominique Delorme, Ramli Ibrahim, Justin McCarthy. Then people started to see that foreigners could be artists as well as students. But I am dancing because when I offered the art, people accepted it. That nourished me. And so that nourishment from the audience, from the guru, is what motivates you to keep going. but I don't think external discipline is going to make an artist.
Like you mentioned, when you first came to India, foreigners were considered hippies or something.
Right.
But like, how difficult was it for you to be a foreigner in India and pursue this? And I'd also heard that there was something between the years in which you came. Like there was a, if you would have come 1 year earlier or 1 year later, it would have been something.
Oh,
Uh,
well, that's a wonderful question. Actually, I received my Fulbright to come in 1972, and that was just after the Bangladesh War. And at that time, we had a horrible US President Nixon who supported Pakistan. And so India decided to review its policies on giving visas for students and scholars. Because of that, I had a 1-year delay, and I only came in 73. The advantage to that was that in that time, I finished my master's degree, taught at university. And so I actually, when I came to India, didn't have to run back. I could extend my grant. But as far as adjusting to India, it was interesting. I arrived in Delhi, and there was no issue about it being India. But the issue was the problem of any young woman in a new city where you really don't know the rules. I had decided I wanted to live in a paying guest so that I would have a little guidance. But that paying guest turned out to be a kind of created room in Baki Lane in the middle of Delhi, in the back of an old bungalow. The family was up in Simla, and there was like a 12-year-old boy who obviously didn't speak English, who was in charge. So I didn't know whether or not it was okay for me to walk around in my bathroom, in my bathrobe with, a boy there. I didn't know whether it was okay to go out after dark if I needed bread. I didn't know that you have to turn off the punkah because the power might go off. I mean, all the little things about adjusting. And, and eventually, and he'd lock the door, I'd be locked out. So eventually I got my own apartment and I managed. My entree into India that helped was that I had 4 uncles. There were 4 artists who were like batchmates or professors of very close family friends from the time I was 10. Narendra Patel had gone to the States. So Shankar Chaudhary, Himad Shah, Shanti Dave, and Santosh, Tia Santosh. Because of them, I then became friends with all the modern artists. And took me a long time to begin to know any of the dancers, because in Manipuri, I was the only student.
Also, just sharing on how the differences that you had to face when you came to India. What about the food and the differences in? Somebody has asked this question online. Is that how did you manage your food at that time, and like how did you? Because it must be a drastic change in terms of what you ate there and what you ate.
Actually, I mean, food has never been a problem. I've unfortunately never had a problem eating too much. And I love the food, but I've never been addicted to the kitchen. And so in the West, I think I was more familiar with using an oven. And here, of course, there's just the burners. So I think I wound up eating out a lot. I accepted a lot of dinner invitations. And one thing that's very amusing about that is that my feeling was that by going out with friends in the artistic community, that was much better, because let me put it this way. As a young woman, I understood that my interest in India was my interest. And I understood that if I were to have any relationship or a boyfriend, that if it did not become permanent, that you would lose your little friends because they're their friends. I wanted my own identity. So all of the artists, whether it was Gaitonde, Birande, Ravi, all of these people, they were all friends, and I interacted with everybody in public to make sure that there would not be any issues of anything personal. But what I didn't, of course, realize was that in India, the moment you're seen in public with anybody, it's assumed that something's going on. And that was like quite mortifying. Because again, an American attitude is that you're watching yourself, you know what you're doing. It's not external that people are watching. Whereas in India, it tended to be more like, you know, the other way around.
Right. So so these are the kind of things that I was wanting to know. Okay, you know, especially in the 80s, it must have been different, and Delhi in 80s must have been much different than what it is today. Is there anything specific, like any story that you can recall that you faced during that time in the 80s in Delhi? Was it different for students on their own, especially, you know, a girl rather than today?
Well, for one thing, of course, Delhi was very safe. You know, the worst that would happen is you'd walk by and somebody might whistle a film tune. You did not have the issues that you have today. And of course, one of the things was that before 91, there were really no consumer goods that you had from the West.
Okay.
And so in those days, I wore contact lenses. Then later I had LASIK, so I don't need glasses anymore. But like, for instance, there was no such thing as contact lens solution in India. I had to bring that with me. I mean, you cannot believe the things that were not available. And so I also developed the art over the years of like bringing everything from India to the West and bringing everything from the West here. When I had my daughter, I mean, like diaper pins, nappies, you know, the plastic pants to go over them, everything had to be brought in. So there was that. And then there was, you know, I would take my daughter with me sometimes to meetings with sponsors so that I wouldn't be alone with them. And I think that I've been pretty fortunate, partly because I think that many times I never picked up the cues. I didn't know what was going on. And it was a time when people were like so aggressive, and I really didn't get it. So I think that I've been spared a lot.
Someone has asked, can you share your experience about the Odissi culture as you're an Odissi dancer? What was your first interaction with the Odissi culture, and how has that helped you in your dance form?
Well, actually, I'll tell you a story. The first time I went to Orissa was a summer workshop. It was the last year that Guru Charan Mahapatra was teaching at Kala Vikas Kendra. So I stayed at Kala Vikas Kendra because it was during the summer. I was given one entire room, which was wonderful to have that privacy. The other girls were in another room. I slept on a wooden bed, no mattress. If you didn't take a bath by 6 a.m, the water was too hot. I would go in the afternoon by rickshaw to Guruji's house for my own classes. But because Pratima Bedi had been there a couple of months before and created a terrible scandal, he did not want anyone to know that someone from outside was there. Forget about foreign, even from outside of the Guruji's. So that was my first intro. Also, Guruji had me perform with the students, and he said, don't tell them what a short time you've been learning, they won't understand. And he had me perform, you know, Mangala Charan with everyone, and then with the teacher from KVK and with, you know, scholarship holder. But this was in Cuttack. Now in Cuttack, oh my goodness, first of all, you've got Guruji's daily puja. And so this is wonderful because we all participate in it. It gives you a sense of culture. And Guruji always had us observe what was going on around us so that we could imbibe that into our dance. Later, when my daughter was crawling, he would stop the class and say, see, this is stop. This is when you're doing, Hare Krishna, this is what you need to do. There was also the ritual of bathing, which meant that in the morning, you would take your clothes, your toothbrush, your soap, everything. You would go and get a bucket from the well, put it into the bathing room. Then you would go to the pit toilet and avoid the giant cockroaches. And then you would come back and, wash your clothes, your hair, and everything. If you forgot something, tough luck. You can't go there till after your bath. And then, of course, that was very interesting. And of course, some girls took longer than others. We had to all adjust with that. The thing is that we didn't go out. The big excitement was going for coconut water, nariyal pani. And, but of course, the first time I went to Odissi, I went with my mother when she was to visit all of the temples. Basically, Odia culture is very ancient, very deep, and very rich. And it's something like a diamond mine where more needs to be brought out and more value needs to be given for the artists and for all of the arts, because so many people are not getting their due. And that creates a kind of competition and not the kind of feeling that would be wonderful to have in a community of artists. But I feel very blessed to be able to have gone deeply into it and to be able to move the tradition forward and also to share it everywhere.
Somebody has also asked, how has Odissi helped you in understanding the spirituality of Jagannath from the culture of which Odissi is inspired?
That's a wonderful, wonderful question. You see, as I said, when I came to India, I had a dance background, and I did not come as some do on a spiritual quest. And I didn't come to become a professional dancer. I came because I'd always had an empathy for cultural nuance and understanding. Over the years, as I've continued in my Odissi, it has definitely enhanced and brought out my own spiritual journey. Because I would say that as a dancer, half your riyaz is your personal development. And so we are blessed to be every day. You're going to work your whole life. What work do you want to do? When you're a dancer, your work is about love, truth, and beauty, and not selfish, self-centered love, right? But non-dualistic, inclusive love, real truth, universal truth, and beauty that's not superficial and saccharine. And so by able to going into the text, and really the reason that I'm doing Odissi is the technique is beautiful and I love it. But when it turned out that Abhinaya was my forte, and the ability to internalize rather than intellectually understand meanings was very enriching for me. Now, in terms of Jagannath culture, my goodness, you see, Jagannath is very personal, and you understand culture in comparison. You see, whatever you are, when you learn about the other, it gives you the opportunity to understand yourself, all the things that you take for granted. So if I dance in the South and I'm doing a choreography where V.A.K. Rao says, no, that's Sanchari showing Radha going out of the house and her mother-in-law is sleeping. You shouldn't do like that. Then I asked Guruji. Well, first of all, he understood the Abhinaya because it's a set composition. And Guruji said, in South, they don't like to think about Parakiya. And then also Jagannath, when we in our compositions, we go like this to Guruji. to Jagannath, we clap our hands or we say, come. In the South, they're like, you can't talk to God like that. But the thing is, in Orissa, relationship with Jagannath is very personal. It's a very personal thing, and it's loving, and you can even scold, and you can entreat, and it's part of the culture, it's part of the dance. And then also, Jagannath is so profound because he embodies so many different aspects of the divine. There's the Buddhist, there's the tribal, there's Vishnu. And I've been so fortunate, that I've had darshan from Jagannath many, many times because he welcomes me. And it's a blessing.
Just as we have a few more minutes left, I'd also like to ask you, how has your experience been with SPIC MACAY, and how important do you think this is for the youth generation today?
Yes, SPIC MACAY has done obviously amazing and incredible work. There's no doubt that when the light bulb went off for Kiran Seth hearing Indian music abroad and then saying, wow, why didn't I get this earlier? And SPIC MACAY has reached so many people. What I would like to see is all over the country. I would like artists, schools, educators, people to take the SPIC MACAY model and in your own small way, expand it. Because you see, when a school or a college gets one SPIC MACAY concert in a year, it's not enough. No. And when there are so many artists, young artists saying, there's no chance to perform, what to do? You need to go and offer to schools, to old age centers, to hospitals. When I was in America for the longest that I was away for 3 years. That's the longest, 78 to 81. During that time, I did 250 school shows for Los Angeles Unified School District. Over the years, I've done 450 school shows, aside from many, many hundred college lectums. And they had it set up where every school would get 8 performances, one every month. And along with the performance, you get materials in advance, you get follow-up, and it would be organized, within the school system. So I think that it's just exponentially fabulous what SPIC MACAY has done. And I would love to see everybody make micro sharing of arts units in every city where you are. I think that young artists should just get together and offer in different places, because everything is good and we need more and more and more of it.
Someone's also asked, what is your advice to young aspiring dancers to persist and not give up? What motivates one to practice day after day over years to achieve excellence and ultimately self-realization through arts?
Well, when I first met Hari Prasad Chirasi in Los Angeles, at the home I was staying, very close friends of his. And, she said, you must see, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a student of Gela Babu. And he said, Riaz, Riaz, Riaz. Okay. However, always remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you are doing in a routine way, you will actually be diminishing. You need to find that source. One of the things you can do, you don't want to practice just to, you need to have the physical skills. Guruji said, for instance, in choke, step 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, where you're sitting, he said, do it for 1 hour a day. Wonderful advice. Okay. Did I ever do it for an hour a day? Definitely not. Okay. But I did enough other things. You have to practice because you love to do it. And one thing is that you see senior dancers, like in the West, with Western dancer ballet, you know, when you become a little bit intermediate, you think you're too good to do the basics. But people who are senior, they're more than ready to do the basics with the beginners every day. And this is, Margot Fontaine said that if I don't practice for 2 days, I know at 4 days the audience knows it. You know, the motivation, you know, as a musician or a dancer, the motivation has to come from you. But I would say that you get nourished by sharing it. So, you know, dance for kindergartners, dance for your neighbors, offer a performance for your birthday party. Go to Help Age. Go and dance for old people who are sitting there being bored, right? I mean, go to Canned Care. You know, I mean, I've done all of these things over the years, Action for Autism, and you will feel nourished, you know, by sharing your art. Just remember that it's not for you. If it's for you, you will not be happy. If it's for others, whether it's your dance or anything else you do, if you're doing it for others, it will nourish you and you'll be happy.
Another question someone has asked is that our attire is one of our major identifications. But as you see in the present scenario, a lot of senior dancers are probably doing modifications to their costumes and ornaments. So the question is, it'll create a confusion between the art forms. And what is your thoughts on this?
Well, it's a very important question. And there's no simple answer, because all of the classical dances are basically reconstructions based on past, more or less, with exceptions. You know, like Manipuri, Bhagya Chandra's vision. All right. So let's take Odissi. The costume was evolved out of what is there in the temple sculpture, what the Maharis wore, what the Gotipuras wore. It was not, what we are wearing today is something that was intelligently based on history and created. Therefore, it's not etched in stone. Obviously, if one evolves and makes certain changes, that's not a sin. The problem is, whether we are doing new choreography or changing costumes or whatever, your aesthetic based on the best of what you know may or may not be good. And also, for instance, in the past, someone who would be creating would be somebody who was immersed in their own tradition and had like 50 years experience before they shifted or made changes. Nowadays, when someone is very young, it's like, okay, here's an idea. Well, maybe it's good and maybe it's not. One of the things I would say is that my guru, Kelucharan Mapatra, was very generous spirited. He believed that if he taught to so many that would not be responsible to him and they made changes, that the art was strong enough to survive it, that those who did things that weren't very good would gradually recede. And so I would say that when people do these odd, weird costume things, it's really not very aesthetic. And I just hope that people's taste, it won't last. One thing is, the more you stick to tradition, the safer you are. And one should not, whether it's fusion in the dance or in costumes, it may be a novelty for the moment, but it may not have staying power.
As we end this session, I'd like to ask you your message to the young viewers that who are watching right now. What would you like to send them a little message?
Well, I'd like to say that I hope that you always have a life filled with dance and music. I hope that you will always make the effort to explore and to go deeply into the art. I think that if you want to do Abhinaya, you have to start with really understanding Who is this Nayaka? Where is she? Is she Odia or Tamil or Punjabi or Italian or from Peru? So that you get the right Bob. Understand the context, medieval, village, whatever. Then you have to feel it and then you have to share it. And basically, if you're honest to your art, to your guru, and to yourself, then whatever you do will be bringing out your own personality and it'll be worth sharing.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think this concludes our session today. And it is indeed a privilege talking to you and listening to all your stories.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed being with you. And good luck.
Thank you.
All the best for SPIC MACAY's conference.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Taranya ji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, very much, Sharon ji, Meera here, and I loved your reply. I just loved your reply. Thank you so very much regarding the costume and your sadhana and your long time, like it's a Guru Sasya parampara that you respected our Guru like God. And I'm so thankful that you are carrying his legacy and we are in one family. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful day, Sharon ji.
Thanks, sweetheart. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, hello.
Okay, Kritika is came. Just a second. Ma'am. Okay, ma'am. We are
Yes, I'm ready.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Vidhi, you can just let me know if the video is fine today.
Okay, ma'am. If there's some problem, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I think this is okay.
So, should we start, ma'am?
Well, from my side, yes.
Okay. नमस्कार स्पिक में के अनुभव सीरीज के 5वें दिन पे मैं आप सभी का स्वागत करती हूँ। ये 4 दिन कैसे गुजर गए पता ही नहीं चला और सीखने में इतना मजा आ रहा है कि क्या बताए। सरिता मिश्रा जी 3 दिन से बहुत ही बेहतरीन तरीके से हमें सिखा रही है। मैं सरिता मिश्रा जी से निवेदन करना चाहती हूँ कि वे आए और इस वर्कशॉप को आगे बढ़ाए। थैंक यू।
Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. My greetings and my good wishes to one and all. I'm Sarita Mishra, disciple of Guru Sri Vichitrananda Swami and Guru Yudhishthir Naik. And during my childhood, I have learned and taken the training from Guru Niranjan Raut and Guru Padmacharan Tehri. Before I start, I bow down to all my gurus for making me efficient in the field of Odissi to share my art with all of you. Wishing you all a happy learning with me. Today, as you all know, we have been taking the station from last 4 days. Today is the 5th day, and tomorrow we complete the station. So those who have joined today, I suggest get tuned and today and tomorrow, because every day also we are kind of giving you a glimpse of what we did yesterday and the previous days. So if you have missed, then you will get a link, if not in detail, but then you will get a link what you others have already learned. I'm very, very overwhelmed with the response that a lot of students are writing to me that they are following this channel to learn, and some of them have already learned from me, but still they are following. So I'm very happy and thankful to SPIC MACAY and Shri Ashok Jain sir, Abhishek Agrawal, and all the team members of SPIC MACAY. I extend my gratitude for initiating this beautiful effort to do